So without further ado, Sam, could you kick us off with all the things that are happening and not happening in the state legislature? Sam Slom.
Thank you, Gene. Aloha, everyone, and I echo Gene's support and thank you for coming out on this Tuesday night. Just a couple things. First of all, as far as the school issue and the closures issue, as Mark said, yes, I testified against closure of the schools. I had two sons that went to Kamilawiki, one son that graduated from Kaiser High School. I feel very strongly about it. I had testified a couple of years ago against closure of Wailupe. And that was a school that the government kept trying to close for 10 years because there were certain individuals that had a personal thing about this little school that was so successful and so special. Well, they managed to close it. And not one of the things that they promised has come true in 18 months. They didn't save any money. They didn't use it for any community purposes or other educational pursuit. It's costing everybody more money because of the vandalism and the destruction to the property. What we learned in that exercise was that the city owns the ground beneath the schools, and that's true for the schools out here. We also learned that it's important to stay together on this issue because I also testified against the closure of Liliokalani School, which, as you know, was announced last week that they would close that, plus 2 Kalihi schools. Look, here's my thing. If you've got schools that are performing well, if you've got teachers and parents and students and the community that are supporting these schools, and they're good schools, why close them? The argument is, well, they're non-performing schools because the attendance dropped. Well, we can look at several things as to why attendance dropped. Kamilawiki, for example, when you went from the 6th grade just to the 5th grade, and other things as well. But am I wrong? Didn't we spend 2 decades and hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars because we wanted to reduce the teacher-pupil ratio? And now we've done that. We've done it quite well. So you can't look at just the number of students. You have to look at the services that are offered, and also you have to look at the support from the community. And the support from the community has been unwavering. I'm sorry, but I'm much more critical of the Department of Education. I've been trying to get a financial and management audit for more than 14 years now for that department, which spends more than $2.7 billion a year, 80% of which does not go into the classroom. It's outside. So if there's any problem, if anything should be closed, it's probably the DOE and not our community schools. Let me also mention, because Gene asked at the outset, we are both minority leaders, but there's a simple difference between the two of us. Gene is very fortunate because he's got 8 compadres in the minority out of 51. Me, I've got me. This is it. I'm on all 15 Senate committees. I have a wonderful staff, mostly young people. And I work them to death. And that's why I didn't bring them tonight. They worked all day today. Oftentimes, I'll be on or have 4 committees that are meeting at exactly the same time. And I try to go to all of them. And if I'm not there, I have my eyes and ears there. So every single committee. And I think I've achieved a pretty good voting record so far. Gene also told you that we've passed the 18th day of the 60-day legislative session. That's 1/4 of the way gone. Now, what do we have to look for? What have we done in that 25% plus time? Well, what was our #1 problem here in our community? #1 was economics. An operating budget, creating jobs, improving the business climate. What have we done? For the first time in the state's history, a new administration has failed to produce an operating budget on time. Our state constitution requires that the administration present a 2-year budget and a 6-year fiscal plan every January prior to the opening of the legislature. Legislature opened January 19th. There was no budget. Now we're into the middle of February. There's no budget. The governor's people told us in the Senate, in the Ways and Means Committee, that it would be till mid-March until we got a budget. That's unacceptable. No other administration has ever done that before. And I know this is a new administration, and I know there are new people. but that's no excuse. And we should be really strong about that. They have to do the job that they do. Because if we were not to get the budget until mid-March, this legislature would be into session until mid-September or October. You sure don't want that. And until that budget is produced, first to the House and then over to the Senate, there's nothing that we can fund. Not one program, because we don't know what the money's going to be. Here's what we do know. The governor has said that the budget deficit is $800 million. I've looked at the figures. I've gone over the figures prior to and after the session began. My estimate is between $1 and $1.5 billion of shortfall. Some of you that keep up with financial things may have heard that 2 weeks ago, the Moody's Investment Service, which is the leading investment service in the United States, ranked Hawaii #1 worst state in the union out of 50 states. Worst state in terms of total debt and underfunding of its state pension program. The reason the underfunding of the pension program is really important is because, guess what? If we're not able to fund the employees' retirement system, then guess who gets to do it? Look in the mirror, look around, because you're on the hook. The taxpayers of this state must fund the employees' retirement system. Right now, it's $8 billion underfunded. That means if it were an opportunity to pay off what is due existing employees, active and retired, we couldn't do it. We're short $8 billion. Take that number, add to it another $7 to $9 billion of underfunding of the state's employee health system. Those two systems alone, we're talking between $15 and $16 billion. Now, some of you may know that I'm a real critic of government spending and increase in government. But one thing I've always insisted on, and that is that the government keep its promises. And people relied on those promises for their retirement, for pension, for health care, and so forth. And I believe that the government's got to honor those commitments. But I said 20 years ago, before I was ever in the legislature, and I said it again 10 years ago and 5 years ago, look, we've got the most generous benefits of any state in the nation. And you've got to start by telling new hires, new people that you're going to include, they can't have the same kinds of benefits, while keeping the benefits that the people that have already earned them and relied upon, they're not shortchanged. We haven't done that. We haven't made one move to do it. We have some bills in the current session right now which would do that, but we haven't done it as yet. So those are real concerns. We've got real problems with the social service delivery. We've got all of these organizations that have for years been able to deliver what the state has guaranteed in terms of programs. Mental health and teenage programs, young adults, older folks, and all of that. They're in jeopardy right now because all of their programs have either been cut significantly or the state says we don't have the money and so we can't give you the money. Meanwhile, their operations go on every day. They've got people on their payroll. They have to pay office rent. They have to do all those things without any guarantees of money. Today we had two bills that would have sought emergency appropriations for Department of Human Services and Health Care. And reluctantly I voted against those bills because every year for the last 10 years we've had emergency appropriations. You can't do that. Now, every single mom, every family, and every small business in this community has taken severe cutbacks, has done without, has reinvented itself, but I'm sad to tell you that your state government has not done it. It believes that somehow, somewhere, the money is going to come, either from Washington, which it's not, or from you, the taxpayers. That's the plan. My belief is you have to cut down on expenditures just like all of us have done. You have to reduce debt. You have to improve the business climate to attract new capital and new investment and new business here, but we haven't done that. That's not been our emphasis. Instead, the governor announced, and by the way, the governor, when he was campaigning, made two specific campaign promises. One, He said, I do not favor the general excise tax increase, but will not increase taxes. He said that specifically. Second thing was, he said, my administration will be the most transparent, and we will always tell the truth. Let's take that second one first. In the area that you're probably most familiar with, the nomination of the new Supreme Court Justice, Sabrina McKenna, who, by the way, will be confirmed by the Senate tomorrow, he refused to release nominees that had also been on the Judicial Selection Commission. Previous administration, they announced everybody so that you had an opportunity for input. That hasn't been done. Secondly, when the governor said no new taxes, he provided administration bills that would increase 8 taxes and add 3 others. The ones that you're most familiar with have to do with reducing pensions or taking them away, taking away the state payment for Medicare B, reducing deductions for the state income tax, and then increasing taxes on alcohol, on beer, and sodas. We had the soda tax, a great debacle the other day. Now, I have to admit to you, can we talk? Can we be friends and talk? I don't drink beer. I had one when I think I was 6, and that was it. I didn't like it. I drink wine maybe once a year on a really good occasion. I'm a Pepsi drinker. I drink my Pepsi. Everybody knows that. They were going to tax all sugared beverages. And then they found out that a lot of the local juices are really sugared beverages. They have juice in them, but if you read the label, 3%, 5%, 10%. And as Pepsi and Coca-Cola testified, it would mean the loss of jobs and possibly the loss of our bottling plants here, because they're already paying the highest taxes in the nation. They're already the least profitable of all the bottling plants. It's both Pepsi and Coke. This is what we've done to business. We hardly have a manufacturing segment anymore. We don't make anything. We buy everything. And we want more money to keep doing it. Well, you're not going to get the money from the federal government because, unfortunately, even with our friend, President Obama, and our good buddy, Senator Inouye, he was forced to retreat last week and say it. Look, what did they say about Senator Inouye? He's the pork king. He actually relished that title. He liked it. I'm the king of pork. I can bring that pork in. Not anymore. Because the president, who's facing his own fiscal problems, said, any bill that has earmarks, I will veto that bill. So Senator Inouye had to back off. We're not getting those funds. We're not getting TANF funds. Oh, and by the way, there's that other little project. What's it called, Gene? Oh, the rail project. The train to nowhere. $8 billion to construct. No estimates of how much it costs to operate. No estimates how much it costs to maintain. Now, I just told you about $8 billion unfunded in the employees' retirement system, $7 to $8 billion in the healthcare system, an overall deficit of $800 million to $1.5 billion. Don't have the money for all those things. And here's the city wants to build this project without federal funds and asking you for more tax money. It doesn't make sense. Why doesn't it make sense? Well, the costs don't add up, but guess what? What do you hear every day on the news? Every day, without exception. Water main break. Sewer break. We don't have to go too far to see the sewers right down the street. Roads. I gotta admit to you, I used to say that our roads were third world roads. And then I got all these letters from Gene's friends in Indonesia and Asia, and they said, do not insult us. We have third world roads and they're better than yours. So now I refer to them as fourth world. By the way, the U.S. Department of Transportation referred to Hawaii's roads as #1 worst in the nation. Why? Because we don't pay enough taxes for our fuel? Wrong. We pay the highest taxes for our fuel. We pay all these things, but the legislature simply raids these special funds, takes the money out, puts it in the general fund, and uses it for salary increases or whatever they want to. They're not bound to use it for that purpose from which the money came.